total segment.
So what, in your out years there with the higher revenue, what are you estimating the total to be?
It's in the book. I think it got up, I can't remember. I can tell you this. They built a 7-mile express toll lane in Miami. The state legislature put a cap on it of $1 a mile, all right? They hit the cap about 6 months ago. It's only been open for a year. So every place that these price managed lanes are being put out there, they're working. They're being very successful. I have no doubt the 495 project will be successful. Their traffic and revenue forecasts were done before the recession hit. I talked to my traffic and revenue people when we were in the midst of this, and I said, you know, how long for us to get back? And this was 3 years ago. He said 2015, and it looks like, I don't know if it was dumb luck, but I think he's right. I think before you get back to where you were in 2000, it might be as long as 2015. So while we're all happy, if you go back and look at your numbers, you're still not back where you were yet. But be happy, we're getting there.
If the general assembly put a dollar cap on that, have they lost the 50-mile-an-hour throughput?
That's what you're at risk of doing, yes. So they're going back to the legislature and asking to remove that this year. That's going to be a goal there. If you don't, it's going to happen.
But they knew that legislation was in there when you went to the market for money?
They did. Well, they didn't do it with bonds, all right? What they did on that particular project is something along the lines of what you all are doing here. It's very creative. They didn't actually build the first 7 miles of it. They didn't have to build anything. They made use of existing shoulders, narrowed lanes, restriped things. So they created, out of existing paved area, new lanes, all right? They price managed those lanes only. The other lanes are still there, and they're jamming the revenue from it. And you do a shoulder transit access on your interstate now. When you told me that, I saw the bus around, I was like, that's one step closer to what we're talking about here.
I had a quick question for Larry regarding the 495 express lanes. You had a wide group of TMP elements in your TMP, and one of them you mentioned was a $50,000 telework incentive. Now, when you were talking about it, you mentioned it was during construction. So was it only for construction? And once that ended, that benefit went away?
Our subsidy was for only during construction.
And so will it again go in play for when you do new construction on that? Is that going to be something that you might?
It would probably, well, it would depend on the setting. I mean, you know, we look at the corridors, we try to determine what's the best fit to get users off of that roadway during the time period that it's under construction. The telework incentives, that most of the telework incentive agreements that we signed were with companies that are well-established companies, actually, and have more than 50 employees. They didn't have to have them, but most did. And I suspect that most of those telework incentive programs will move forward. In other words, the companies themselves will invest in to keep those systems running. The $50,000 was for the employer to set the system up.
Okay, to set it up.
Not for the individual.
Well, no, I knew it wouldn't be for them.
Yeah.
To actually set it up, and so they.
I'd get around for that too. But no, so that, and once you set it up, you know, a lot of the initial cost is behind you.
Right, exactly.
Larry, when you did the 495 express lane, I'm trying to recall, did you add capacity to the general purpose lanes at the same time, or just reconstruct those?
We just moved them over, essentially.
You left the same capacity?
We had 4 and 4, we left 4 and 4.
Other than maybe some improvements at the interchanges?
Yeah, we made some minor improvements in the interchanges. That could arguably be having some effect on the current revenue stream, because we've seen some improvements in the GP lanes, current revenue stream to the operators. But primarily, the project was focused on replacement of aging infrastructure. That was our skin in that game.
Right.
And on the addition of the HOT lanes. In other words, we weren't building at the same time competing major facilities improvements. We didn't go into 66 and do the $500 or $600 million interchange improvement that we need to do. We did what we needed to do to fit the hot lanes.
What's the daily volume through that section 2 Tyson's Corner right now?
What's
On
what?
495. Give us an order of magnitude of daily volumes out there.
Oh gosh, you know, it's probably pushing 140, 180,000. Yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. I don't have the exact numbers, I can probably get them, but It used to be we're about 120 in that area, and that was probably 5 to 10 years ago was the last time I looked at it.
Dropped to recession.
I think, now, we went up, in the early 2000s, and now we're actually seeing a little bit of decline
Yeah.
in the traffic volumes. And I think that's not uncommon just for us. I think you're seeing that in a number of emerging urban areas around the country.
There, you said earlier that obviously you didn't have exits and entrances at every single interchange, but you went back and you added some. Can you tell us your approach you took on deciding where to put those accesses and then lessons learned? Because we got a study underway right now, a couple of folks are here from our DOT that are working on study, feasibility study, and that's one of the questions we have, that maybe we learned something from you, so.
Well, I saw it as a balance, frankly. The driving factor in terms of the access points for the facility, if you have a private operator, a private partner engaged, is going to be the economic viability of those access points, right? So obviously Tyson's Corner was an economic center that was driving that improved access to Tyson's Corner. On the other side of the fence, on the DOT side of the house, is where do you put access points such that you create and keep a limited access highway? In other words, you can't allow the general purpose lanes to suffer as a result of other factors. And the Federal Highway Administration and their funds and their loans are all a part of that package too, because that is a key mission in any federal infrastructure project. So you have to find that balance, and we did. We worked very closely with our partners in the Richmond area office with Federal Highways and with our private partners to find that balance. What are the best access points to economically drive revenue for them and for our customers to get where they need to go in the HOV 3+ category? And at the same time, how do you keep the general purpose lanes from suffering as a result of that?
So did you have to do a lot of work down those, what we call Y lines or side streets?
No.
To receive that amount of volume of traffic hitting long haul?
No, we didn't do a lot of work on the arterials. I think a case could be made at some point in time to consider investing, depending on the volume on those arterials, in extending some potential toll operations into the arterials themselves so that you can pick up traffic, right? But you're right, that's very controversial, and it's expensive.
We don't want to get
And so you don't want to get into all that. But that may help in the long run in terms of actual, throughput of the main system itself. If you work out a system that will work for everybody, then
So lesson learned, you said you went back and added some. Was that just because of financing, you didn't have the money at that time? Or did you say, we should have done one there? I thought you said y'all went back and added something.
No, the only thing we might add in the future would be room for that circulator at Jones Branch. We have no plans to add additional access points today in that corridor.
Can you explain a little bit more about your dynamic toll pricing? How does it vary? And what is the max or min or?
There is no max, there is no minimum. So it varies based on demand. It's all supply and demand. To date, I think the maximum toll has been about $9 for the 14-mile corridor. I think the projections were somewhere between 10 cents a mile and $1 a mile, so 14 was the max, and $1.50 was the lowest number on the sheet. And then they've run up between about $52 up to about $9 has been the max. But it could go higher depending on volume, just how much demand is there.
So is it truly the demand that you're looking at, or you're comparing the travel time advantage between the general purpose lanes and the express lanes?
Say the question again.
Are you only looking at the demand on the express lanes, or are you comparing the travel time advantage that your express lane is providing to the travelers?
Well, we are not yet signing travel time. We're looking at that. We're working with our private partners to actually sign travel times. What we are looking at is the best case throughput for all lanes from the state's perspective. The operator is obviously looking at the best case scenario in terms of his ability to move traffic and meet his performance parameters and collect revenue. So the more you spread that traffic across all 6 lanes, the better it is for everybody. Yes, ma'am.
I was interested in, you referred to building transit ridership patterns, and I can see that might happen, but can you say what your experience has been and how the various transit agencies are responding, if they are?
Yeah, we're 1 year in operation.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and when you start transit, 1 year is a pretty small play. We have seen, at least in terms of some polls we've taken, we've seen a lot of satisfaction from bus users in terms of the fact that they are at that connection, and they're no longer dependent on only a portion of the bus network. So they can get a bus now in Woodbridge, and you can run that bus all the way to Tyson's Corner, which is your normal employment center, and you've got a time savings thrown in at the same time. So that's what we see.
That's a regional bus authority or?
Yes,
system
that
already?
particular bus is a regional bus, is a regional bus authority.
But you're coordinating with multiple transit agencies?
We are coordinating with Fairfax Connector, which is a regional bus authority. They have a bus in there, and then OmniRide, which is a regional bus authority, and they have a full-time dedicated bus service in the lanes. Metro does not yet have a dedicated bus in those lanes, but they may add one.
This question is Mr. Wagner. Excuse me. In the context of applying for RTA new starts or small starts on this project, do you have an idea of what the minimum level of service the transit agency would have to keep on that corridor?
I believe they do require something like 15-minute headways.
Okay.
During peak hours, there are minimum requirements.
I know that you talked about using some of those excess funds to do parking rides and other first mile, last mile enhancements. Does the transit authority have the ability to kind of make choices about where to invest anything beyond that?
If you're, it comes down to the deal. I presented what is a relatively simple approach here to make the case that transit's 100% owner in this deal. All right? So if they're the 100% owner of the revenue, they should have a lot of discretion in how they use excess revenue. All right? But it's going to be something discussed in the various agreements you have to go through, be they with your DOT, whoever owns the right-of-way, that you basically are going to enter into a 30-year lease agreement for. That's your ownership, okay, because you're building the facility. I'm talking you being the transit agency. So those are all details you have to negotiate as you go through the deal.
Thanks.
Any final questions? Time for one more. Sure.
Back to Tampa. These all are highway lanes, essentially?
Actually, if you look at our
They can't really run
study,
into the urban
if
core.
you look at our study and go to our website, we included applying a similar approach to our arterials, where in your major arterial corridors, we created a jump. Basically, it was either an underpass or an overpass of a signalized intersection. And you've seen that as sometimes called Q jumps. We created, again, with the idea that it's a transit, you're basically creating a continuous transit throughway. Today, your BRT systems handle that with what they call preferential signal control. They sense the bus coming, they'll green light the bus. It works, but it's not as fast as having your own bridge over or underpass through the intersection. So you set that up, and then if the cars that are sitting in the congested arterial next to you want to do the jump, they can pay a toll and get the same deal. All right. So it's going down to that. That is not going to have the return financially that the access control through price management would have. So, but it would work. It would enhance the bus service in that corridor.
I was wondering about your job centers in the Tampa area, your current development, where you're running, where your principal nodes are.
Okay. I can tell you this. Yeah, very good. Thanks.
You bet.
Okay. Downtown Tampa, basically described here, it has one of these deals that goes out here. But that's where about 350,000 people live. Actually, out here, there's a place called Plant City, about, I think it's 25,000. Right here, unincorporated section of town, okay, of the county, 100,000 people in 25 square miles. All right, so it's got the same density out here almost as my city center does over here.
So you're running basically lines from the outside of the city to the center core of the city?
Yep. And you have St. Petersburg over here, all right? So in this section of road here, which is I-275 coming like this, that, if I'm looking at where the greatest need might be, It's probably going to be in this segment here. If you look where all those things feed in, it becomes apparent. That might be a choke point. And it is. That's the most congested section of road there. I've got about as many people coming from St. Pete, Clearwater area, which are over here on Pinellas County, going in easterly directions. I have people coming from Plant, Temple Terrace, Brandon, and Tampa going the other way every day.
And does everything come into one center transit station in the middle of Tampa, or do they come into different points?
We don't have a transit station in the center of Tampa right now. That's, we're very similar to you all. I'd say about 1% of our trips today are handled by transit. It needs to grow. I'm an implementing agency. I'm not a planning agency. So I've always dealt with the challenge of where I get the money and how can I make use of it. So, the idea I have is, here's a way to do something differently and maybe be successful from a production and financial perspective. When you talk about the various modes of transportation, when you get to an urban center, you can only build so many roads. And that's why you see price-managed lanes coming into effect in your urban areas. A price-managed lane and transit are addressing congestion. They only work in cities. They only work where you have congestion. Price-managed lanes because the next lane you put in, what you're saying is that's the last lane I can fit in the right-of-way I have. Because when you start having 10-story office buildings abutting your right-of-way instead of a cow pasture, the opportunity to buy more right-of-way goes out the window. So you build price-managed lanes to provide a sustainable choice.
Let's give a good couple final thoughts here. We have a member of the county commission here in Lakewood. Which one talk just offer a thought or two about transit?
Thank you, and good afternoon to each of you, and thank you all for coming. Transit is very important, and I think it's a key to our competitiveness and our quality of life. But I guess for the last couple of weeks here, I've heard more and thought more about transit than I have in a good while. But I think it's good that we can look at the interrelationship of the various options and things that we can tweak and add to. We do have, I think, a good basic sound plan in terms of the bus, the commuter rail, the light rail, and even the innovative parts of bus rapid transit and so forth. So I think that the fact that we reopen this discussion and that hopefully we are serious that we want to do something, because if you wait until the need is here, then it's very, very difficult to move forward. And we are an area that's very innovative and very creative and visionary, and this is truly creative and visionary. So I hope we'll get all the facts on the table. It will not ever be perfect. Sometimes you have to put all the facts on the table, then we take a leap of faith, and it works for you. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you. Absolutely. Well, thanks each of you for coming today on the first, but will certainly not be the last of our RTA Transit Innovation Series. It will be the last of the calendar year. It's not going to be the last overall. Our next session will be on January the 8th, 2014. It's going to be a video conference session. Dr. David Levinson at the University of Minnesota, and also Ms. Stephanie Locha, the manager for U.S. and Africa for the Institute for Transportation Development Policy. We provide good information on research on land use and trade-offs. That should be very helpful. That will be the beginning of January. And then later that month, we'll have another session on urban bus rapid transit. You see the date there. And then on session number 4, we'll be on busways and system approaches. The one on session 3, the speakers will be in person. We have someone from Cleveland coming in, and also someone from Chicago. The busway one will someone from Pittsburgh coming in, and then some folks from the UK will do remotely from them. So again, here's more information about the transit series at letsgetmoving.org/transit series. And more information about the RTA position. As you know, RTA has endorsed the bus rapid transit-based approach for the community, and that's at letsgetmoving.org/BRT. So at this point, we thank you for coming to today's event on Wednesday, November 20th, and we wish you well. Thank you.